They said she was broken. They said she could never give him what he wanted. But when she walked through those doors with 3 little miracles by her side, the whole room fell silent. This is the story of how cruelty was answered with grace, and how kindness became her greatest revenge. That if this story like this touches your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We share real stories of hope and redemption every day. Now, let's begin. The autumn wind swept through the streets of Vienna, carrying with it the scent of roasting chestnuts and the distant sound of church bells. In one of the grand townhouses that lined the elegant boulevards, a different kind of storm was brewing, one that had been gathering for months, perhaps years. Elena stood by the tall window of the bedroom she had shared with Victor for 7 years. Her fingers trembled as she folded a white linen napkin, placing it carefully into her small leather bag. Outside, the city glowed with warm lights, cafes filled with laughter, couples walking hand in hand beneath the street lamps. But inside this room, everything felt cold. Dead. 7 years, Elena. Victor's voice cut through the silence like glass breaking. He stood near the doorway, his expensive suit perfectly pressed, his polished shoes gleaming under the chandelier light. His jaw was tight with frustration, his eyes hard. 7 years of waiting. 7 years of questions from my mother, from my business partners, from everyone who matters in this city. Elena turned slowly, her soft brown eyes already filling with tears. She had known this conversation was coming. She had felt it building every time he came home late, every time he avoided her touch, every time his mother visited and looked at her with cold disappointment. "Victor, please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can try again. We can see another specialist. There are new treatments now, new options." "Another doctor?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it, only bitterness. "How many doctors do we need to tell us what we already know? You cannot give me children, Elena. You are broken." The word landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples of pain through her chest. She had heard this word before, from his mother during Sunday dinners, from the whispers at family gatherings, from the pitying looks of their neighbors. But hearing it from his lips felt different. Final, like a door slamming shut. "I have tried," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Every prayer, every treatment, every hope I had, I have tried, Victor. Do you think this has been easy for me? Do you think I don't cry myself to sleep wondering what's wrong with me?" Victor loosened his tie and walked to the dresser, his movements sharp with irritation. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, the ice clinking against the crystal. "Trying is not enough. Results matter, Elena. My mother calls me every single day. Every single day. Do you know what that feels like? To be a man of 42 with no heir? To walk into business meetings and listen to my colleagues talk about their sons, their daughters, their family legacies, while I have nothing to show. My friends hold their children at gatherings while my wife gives me nothing but empty promises and tears. Victor, look at me." Elena's voice broke completely now. She took a step toward him, her hands reaching out, pleading. "Look at the woman who stood by you when your business almost failed 5 years ago, who believed in you when the banks turned you away, who worked extra hours teaching children at the kindergarten to help pay our bills, who loved you when you had nothing but dreams and debt." But he wouldn't look. He stared at his reflection in the mirror instead, adjusting his collar as if she were already gone, as if she were already a ghost. "I've made my decision," he said coldly, his voice flat and emotionless. "My lawyer will contact you tomorrow morning. This marriage is finished. I need a woman who can give me a family, not someone who fills my house with silence and shame." Elena felt her legs weaken beneath her. She gripped the edge of the dresser to steady herself. "After everything? After 7 years of love, of loyalty, of standing beside you through everything, you're throwing me away like garbage?" "I'm freeing both of us," he replied, finally turning to face her. His eyes were hard, empty of the warmth she once knew. Gone was the man who had proposed to her in the Stat Park, who had promised to love her in sickness and in health. "Pack what you need tonight. By morning, I don't want to see you here. This is still my house, bought with my money. You have no claim to it." The room spun around her. Elena looked around at the life she had built, the cream curtains she had sewn by hand, choosing the fabric carefully from the market, the plants she watered every morning, talking to them softly, the photographs on the wall of happier times, their wedding day, their trip to Salzburg, Christmas dinners when his mother still smiled at her. All of it now felt like a museum of broken promises, a life that belonged to someone else. With shaking hands, she knelt down and pulled out her small travel bag from under the bed. The same bag she had brought when she first moved into this house as a bride, full of hope and dreams. Now she would leave with it, full of nothing but sorrow. She folded her clothes slowly, each piece a memory. The blue dress from their 5th anniversary dinner at that elegant restaurant overlooking the Danube. The scarf his mother gave her during their first Christmas together, before the blame began. The gray sweater she wore on their first trip to the mountains, when Victor had held her hand and promised they would grow old together. Victor stood watching, arms crossed, unmoved. Not once did he step forward. Not once did his expression soften. "You will regret this," Elena whispered, not with anger or spite, but with quiet certainty. She zipped the bag closed and stood, her legs unsteady. "One day, Victor, you will see the truth. One day you will understand what you've thrown away." He said nothing. He simply turned his back to her, as if she had already disappeared. Elena picked up her bag, wiped her tears with the back of her hand, and walked past him. Her footsteps echoed on the marble floor as she descended the grand staircase one last time. The housemaid, Anna, stood in the corner near the kitchen door, her eyes lowered in sympathy. She had witnessed everything. She knew. Elena pushed open the heavy front door. The cold October air hit her face like a slap, stealing her breath. She paused on the stone steps and looked back at the house that had been her home. The home where she had laughed, cooked Sunday roasts, planted roses in the garden, and cried alone in the bathroom when another month passed without the news she desperately wanted. Then she whispered to herself, her breath forming small clouds in the night air. "I may be leaving with nothing, but I will not stay broken. Kindness will carry me through this darkness. Somehow." And with that, Elena stepped into the cold Vienna night, her small bag in hand, her heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. But somewhere deep inside, beneath all the pain, a tiny seed of hope still remained. She didn't know it yet, but that seed would one day grow into something beautiful. Something Victor could never destroy. Elena walked through the dark streets of Vienna that night, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. She had nowhere to go. No family in the city. No money of her own. Just a phone with 15% battery and one name in her mind, Sophia. Sophia had been her best friend since university. They had studied together, laughed together, dreamed together. While Elena had married Victor and moved into his grand townhouse, Sophia had opened a small bakery near the Naschmarkt. They hadn't seen each other as often in recent years. Victor had always made excuses why they couldn't visit, but Elena knew Sophia's door would always be open. She knocked softly just before midnight. The light above the bakery flickered on, and Sophia appeared in her nightgown, her curly hair wild around her face. When she saw Elena standing there, shivering and crying, she didn't ask questions. She simply pulled her inside. "My God, Elena. What happened?" Elena couldn't speak. She just collapsed into her friend's arms and sobbed, 7 years of pain pouring out all at once. Sophia held her tightly. Come inside. You're freezing." That night, wrapped in Sophia's spare blanket on the small sofa, Elena told her everything. The divorce. The accusations. The humiliation. How Victor had blamed her for their childlessness without ever questioning himself. Sophia's face grew red with anger. "That man is a coward. A selfish, prideful coward." "Maybe he's right," Elena whispered, staring at her hands. "Maybe I am broken. Stop that right now." Sophia sat up straight, her voice firm. "Tomorrow we're going to a doctor. A real one. And we're getting you tested properly. I want you to hear the truth from a professional, not from that heartless man." 3 days later, they sat in a modern clinic in the 3rd district. Dr. Hoffman, a kind woman in her 50s, reviewed Elena's test results with a gentle smile. "Mrs. Albrecht," she said carefully, "there is absolutely nothing wrong with you. Your reproductive system is completely healthy. Your hormone levels are normal. You're ovulating regularly. Medically speaking, you are perfectly capable of having children." Elena's hands flew to her mouth. But we tried for 7 years." Dr. Hoffman leaned forward. "Then I would strongly suggest your husband, your ex-husband, get tested himself. In cases of unexplained infertility, the issue is just as likely to be male factor. Sometimes more so." Sophia grabbed Elena's hand and squeezed it hard. "I knew it. I knew that man was lying to protect his own ego." Elena sat in stunned silence. 7 years. 7 years of shame, of prayers, of blaming herself, of believing she was cursed, and she had never been the problem at all. Outside the clinic, she sat on a bench and cried. But this time they were different tears. Not tears of shame, but tears of relief. Of anger. Of freedom. He destroyed me for nothing, she whispered. No, Sophia said firmly. He tried to destroy you. But you're still here. And now we rebuild. Elena moved into the small apartment above Sophia's bakery. At first, she could barely get out of bed. But slowly, day by day, Sophia coaxed her back to life. She taught Elena how to knead dough, how to shape croissants, how to ice cakes with delicate flowers. Your hands were made for creation, Sophia would say, not for carrying shame. Elena began waking at 5 in the morning to help with the baking. She found peace in the rhythm of it, the measuring, the mixing, the warmth of the ovens. And she found something else too, purpose. She started doing small acts of kindness without even thinking about it. When old Mrs. Bergman from across the street came in, Elena would slip an extra pastry into her bag. When the homeless man, Franz, sat outside in the cold, she brought him hot soup and bread. When the neighborhood children pressed their faces against the bakery window, she invited them in to decorate cookies. You have a gift, Sophia told her one evening. People feel safe around you. They feel seen. One crisp November morning, a man walked into the bakery just as Elena was arranging fresh bread in the window. He was tall, with kind gray eyes and silver hair at his temples. He wore a simple wool coat and carried an architect's portfolio under his arm. Good morning, he said softly. I'll take 2 of those apple strudels, please. They smell like my grandmother's kitchen. Elena smiled, real smile, the first in weeks. She must have been a wonderful cook. She was, he replied. She taught me that food made with care tastes different. You can feel the love in it. Something about the way he spoke made Elena pause. There was sadness in his voice, but also warmth. His name was Matthias. He was a widowed architect who had lost his wife, Clara, to cancer 3 years earlier. He had no children. He lived alone in a modest apartment near the Belvedere Palace and spent his days designing buildings and his evenings volunteering at a soup kitchen. He started coming to the bakery every morning. At first for bread, then for coffee, then just to talk. You're different from most people, he told Elena one day. You listen like you actually care. I do care, she replied simply. Their friendship grew slowly, carefully, like a plant in winter. Matthias would tell her about his architectural projects, a new library, a community center for refugees. Elena would tell him about the children she used to teach, the stories she would read to them. One Saturday, Matthias invited her to join him at the soup kitchen. Elena hesitated. She still felt fragile, uncertain, but something in his eyes told her it would be safe. They spent the afternoon serving warm meals to people who had nothing. Elena held the hands of elderly women who reminded her of her own grandmother. She played with children who had fled war zones. She listened to stories of loss, of survival, of hope. On the walk home, Matthias said quietly, You have a rare gift, Elena. You see people. Really see them. That's why they trust you. Elena looked up at him. You see people too. Maybe, he smiled. Maybe that's why I see you. 6 months passed. Spring came to Vienna, bringing cherry blossoms and warm breezes. Elena and Matthias fell in love, not with grand gestures or expensive gifts, but through shared kindness. Through Sunday mornings at the children's hospital reading stories. Through quiet evenings cooking dinner together. Through laughter over burnt cakes and dancing in Sophia's kitchen. When Matthias proposed, it was simple. They were sitting on a bench in the Stat Park feeding ducks, and he turned to her and said, Elena, I don't have much to offer except my heart. But it's yours completely. Will you marry me? She said yes through happy tears. They married in a small chapel in June, with Sophia as the witness and a handful of close friends. No grand celebration. No expensive gown. Just 2 people who had found each other in the rubble of broken hearts. 3 months later, Elena felt strange. Tired. Nauseous. Her body felt different. At the clinic, the ultrasound technician's eyes widened. Mrs. Baumann, you're pregnant. Elena gasped. Pregnant? Yes. And? The technician moved the probe carefully. There are 3 heartbeats. 3. Matthias jumped to his feet. 3 babies. Triplets, the technician confirmed with a huge smile. 3 healthy boys. Elena covered her face and wept. Matthias knelt beside the examination table, kissing her hands, laughing and crying at the same time. God has answered every prayer, he whispered. Every single one. The months that followed were filled with joy. Sophia threw a small baby shower. Matthias built 3 cribs by hand. The neighborhood rallied around them with gifts and meals and love. And then, on a snowy January morning, Elena gave birth to 3 perfect, healthy sons. She held them to her chest, tears streaming down her face. "I'm not broken," she whispered. "I was never broken." But far across the city, Victor was preparing for his own wedding. To Isabel, a glamorous fashion designer from Paris. The invitations had already been sent out, gold-embossed, expensive, ostentatious. And one of those invitations was addressed to Elena Baumann, formerly Albrecht. Front row seat. When it arrived at the bakery, Sophia tore it open and screamed. "That monster! He's trying to humiliate you one last time." But Elena, holding one of her sleeping sons, simply smiled. A calm, knowing smile. "Let him send his invitation," she said softly. "I think it's time Victor learned the truth." The morning of Victor's wedding arrived with clear skies and bitter cold. All of Vienna seemed to be talking about it. The venue was the Imperial Ballroom at the Palais Auersperg, a palace dripping with crystal chandeliers and gold leaf ceilings. Politicians would be there. Business moguls. Celebrities. The guest list read like a who's who of Viennese society. Victor stood at the altar in a custom-tailored tuxedo, his hair perfectly styled, his confidence radiating through the room. Beside him stood his best man, Klaus, a fellow property developer who had encouraged this entire spectacle. "You nervous?" Klaus whispered. "Why would I be?" Victor smirked. "Today, everyone will see that I've moved on. That I've upgraded." What he didn't say, what he couldn't admit even to himself, was that he had invited Elena for one reason. To watch her sit in that front row, alone and childless, while he married a younger, more beautiful woman. He wanted her to feel the weight of her failure. He wanted her to see what she had cost him. The ballroom filled quickly. Women in designer gowns. Men in sharp suits. Champagne flowed. A string quartet played Vivaldi. Everything was perfect, controlled, exactly as Victor had planned. And then the whispers started. "Is that? No, it can't be. Look at the entrance." Victor turned his head toward the massive double doors at the back of the ballroom. And his heart stopped. Elena walked in slowly, gracefully, wearing a cream-colored dress that glowed softly under the chandeliers. Her dark hair was styled elegantly. She wore no jewelry except simple pearl earrings. She looked radiant, peaceful, strong. But that wasn't what made the room fall silent. Beside her, holding her hands, were 3 little boys. Identical triplets, no more than 8 months old, dressed in matching Navy sailor suits with tiny bow ties. Their big brown eyes looked around the grand room with wonder. A woman gasped audibly. Phones came out. The murmuring grew louder. "Are those her children?" But Victor said she was barren. 3 of them, triplets. Victor's face drained of all color. His hands gripped the edge of the altar. Klaus grabbed his arm. "Bro, is that?" "Yes," Victor whispered hoarsely. Elena walked down the center aisle with quiet dignity. She didn't look angry. She didn't look vengeful. She simply walked with her sons, nodding politely to people she recognized, and took her seat in the front row, exactly where Victor had placed her name. The boys climbed onto her lap, babbling softly. One of them waved at Victor. The other smiled at the flowers. The third rested his head on Elena's shoulder. From the back entrance, Isabel appeared in her wedding gown, a stunning creation of French lace and silk that had cost more than some people's cars. But when she saw the tension in the room, the stares, the phone's recording, she froze. Her maid of honor whispered urgently in her ear, pointing toward Elena. Isabel's eyes widened. She had been told that Victor's ex-wife was barren, that she couldn't have children, that she was the problem. But there sat a woman with 3 healthy sons. Isabel walked slowly to the altar, her veil trembling. She reached Victor and hissed under her breath. "What is this? Who is that woman with those children?" That's Elena," Victor stammered. "Your ex-wife?" Isabel's voice rose slightly. "The one you said couldn't have children." The priest cleared his throat awkwardly. "Shall we begin?" But Isabel wasn't listening. She turned to face the crowd, then back to Victor. "You told me she was the reason you had no children. You blamed her for everything." I thought she was." "You thought?" Isabel's hands shook. "Or you lied. Did you ever get tested yourself, Victor? Did you?" The room went completely silent. Even the string quartet stopped playing. Victor's mouth opened, but no words came out. Isabel stepped back, her eyes filling with tears of anger and humiliation. "We've been together for a year. A whole year, Victor. And I haven't gotten pregnant either." I started to worry. "I went to the doctor last week." She pulled a folded paper from inside her bouquet. Do you want to know what they told me? That I'm perfectly healthy. That if there's a problem, it's not with me. Victor reached for her hand. Isabel, please, not here. No. She pulled away sharply. You paraded me in front of all these people. You invited your ex-wife to humiliate her. But the only person being humiliated today is you, because everyone can now see the truth. She turned to Elena, her voice breaking. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what he put you through. Elena stood slowly, still holding one of her sons. Her voice was soft but clear enough for the front rows to hear. You have nothing to apologize for. You didn't know. But now you do. She looked at Victor then, and there was no hatred in her eyes. Only sadness. You called me broken, Victor. You threw me out and told me I was worthless. But I wasn't the problem. I never was. God showed me that. He gave me a man who loves me for who I am, not for what I can give him. And he gave me these 3 miracles. One of the boys giggled and reached for her face. She kissed his tiny hand. I came here today not to ruin your wedding, Elena continued gently, but to show you, and to remind myself, that kindness always wins. You treated me with cruelty, but I will not treat you the same way. I forgive you, Victor. I hope you find peace. And with that, she gathered her sons and walked back down the aisle. The crowd parted like water. Some people had tears in their eyes. Others looked at Victor with disgust. Sophia met Elena at the door, wrapping her arms around her. You did it. You showed them all outside. Matthias was waiting by the car, bundled against the cold. When he saw Elena and the boys, his face lit up with relief. How did it go? It went exactly as it needed to, Elena said, handing him one of the triplets. Back inside, Isabel dropped her bouquet on the floor. I can't marry you, Victor. I won't marry a man who lies, who blames others for his own failings, who lacks basic kindness. She looked around at the stunned guests. This wedding is over. And she walked out, her bridesmaids rushing after her. Victor stood alone at the altar. The whispers grew louder. Phones recorded everything. His reputation, the one thing he prized above all else, crumbled in real time. Klaus approached cautiously. Victor, maybe you should leave. But Victor couldn't move. He stared at the empty aisle where Elena had walked, where his 3 sons, the sons he could have had if only he'd been kinder, if only he'd been humble enough to get tested, if only he'd loved his wife more than his pride, had just disappeared. That evening, Victor sat alone in his grand townhouse. The same house he'd thrown Elena out of. It felt enormous now. Empty. Cold. His phone buzzed with messages. Business partners pulling out. Friends expressing disappointment. His mother, for once, had nothing to say. He opened his laptop and searched for Elena's name. There were already articles. Photos. Videos from the wedding. The hashtags were trending. Hashtag kindness wins, hashtag Elena strong, hashtag Vienna wedding. One video had millions of views. Elena walking into the ballroom with her sons, calm and graceful, while Victor's face registered shock. He closed the laptop and put his head in his hands. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived at Elena and Matthias's apartment. It was handwritten on simple paper. Dear Elena, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know I finally got tested. The doctors confirmed what you already knew. The problem was mine all along. I destroyed our marriage, your peace, and your reputation for something that was my fault. You showed me more grace at that wedding than I ever showed you in 7 years of marriage. You could have destroyed me, but instead you forgave me. That is a kindness I will never forget and will never deserve. I see now that I didn't just lose a wife. I lost a woman of rare character. I hope your sons grow up knowing how strong their mother is. I don't ask for anything. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. And thank you for teaching me what true strength looks like. Victor. Elena read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer. Matthias came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Are you okay? She leaned back into his embrace, watching their 3 sons play with wooden blocks on the floor. I'm more than okay. I'm free. He finally admitted it, Matthias said softly. Yes, Elena nodded. But I already knew. I didn't need his confession. I needed my healing. And God gave me that. She turned to face her husband. You know what I learned through all of this? What? That kindness is never wasted. Even when people hurt you, even when they don't deserve it, choosing kindness changes you. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you unbreakable. Matthias kissed her forehead. You are the strongest person I know. Outside, snow began to fall over Vienna. Inside their small, warm apartment, surrounded by the laughter of their children and the love they had built together, Elena finally understood the truth that had carried her through the darkness. Kindness is the greatest revenge, because it transforms the person who gives it and leaves those who rejected it with nothing but regret. Victor had his mansion, his money, his status. But Elena had something he would never have: peace, love, and 3 beautiful miracles that proved she was never broken. She was simply waiting for the right blessing. And in the end, that made all the difference. Elena's story reminds us that the world may try to break us, may call us worthless, may throw us away, but kindness has the final word. When we choose grace over bitterness, forgiveness over revenge, love over hate, we don't just survive. We triumph. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Because somewhere out there, someone is sitting in their darkest moment, believing they are broken. And they need to know, the best chapters are still ahead. Thank you for watching.